Morning, everybody. Good to see you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you today. We're assembled, of course, on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. And right off the top, I want to certainly offer my personal condolences and that of the government to the families who have lost loved ones as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. And I want to thank all of the healthcare workers right across BC that are working overtime, putting themselves at risk to provide this vital service to people who are concerned about their well-being, to people who are experiencing COVID-19 directly, and all the rest of British Columbia who know and understand the value we put in our healthcare workers who are always ready for the call. I also want to brief those in attendance and those across BC in the cross-government approach that British Columbia is taking to address the challenges faced by the pandemic that we're currently experiencing. Of course, Minister Dix and Dr. Bonnie Henry will continue with their daily briefings on the public health components that we're so concerned about. But I'm joined today by Finance Minister James and Education Minister Fleming so that we can give you in the media and those at home an opportunity to understand how we're going to deal with the challenges people are experiencing today in their communities and in their households. When I hear the top three things that are on people's minds across the province, it inevitably comes down to, will I continue to receive a paycheck? Is my job secure? Can I pay my rent? Is my business going to get through this? And that sense of concern about the consequences of isolation, self-isolation, the consequences of social distancing and the impact that has on the economy and on businesses is at the top of mind for British Columbians and indeed all Canadians. And so we want to talk to you a little bit about our plans and how we're proposing to protect workers and to support businesses. The number two issue, of course, I hear repeatedly is what's going to happen with our K-12 system, and Rob's going to be here to answer some of those issues so that parents and families that are impacted will have some idea of where we're going and the way forward. And lastly, I want to talk about the cooperation between various orders of government, how we've been able to work with the federal government and municipalities and in continuing to work with those two other orders of government to make sure that we're delivering the services and the comfort that British Columbians expect from their governments. When it comes to workers, of course, we're going to be amending the Employment Standards Act to protect workers and prevent layoffs in the event that someone has to stay at home to self-isolate in the interest of protecting their co-workers and their sector. We want to make sure that no one loses their job by doing the right thing, and that will require amendments to our Employment Standards Act. I've also made it abundantly clear to the federal government that when they're looking in the days ahead, we're expecting tomorrow, and Minister James will give us more details on that, when they're looking at the Employment Insurance Act, they need to make sure that they're not shortchanging people in this crisis. It's a go big or go home environment, it seems to me. The people that I've been talking to, whether they be in labor, whether they be in industry, the BC Business Council, Chambers of Commerce, Boards of Trade, this is a crisis situation and we need an appropriate response from all orders of government, and I'm confident that the Prime Minister and his team understands that. But there are improvements that can and should be made in how we access unemployment insurance or employment insurance in Canada, and this is the time to do that. With respect to the K-12 system, a difficult decision has been made to suspend K-12 learning in BC classrooms at this time, and the decision on how to return will be made in partnership with school districts and independent schools, and Minister Fleming will flesh out the details in that respect. When it comes to business and the economy, Carol James will be working on a package of financial supports for people and businesses. She'll touch a little bit on that. Again, I want to assure people that today we're talking about the plan and the path forward. The details of that really have to wait until we see what the federal government has done so we can complement that work. So I want to assure people before Carol takes the podium that we're talking about a framework here, and the details will be coming once we understand what the federal government is up to. So we're going to be taking actions when it comes to ensuring that businesses and the workers that they depend on are comforted and in place so that we can get through the next number of weeks. There will be a requirement for legislative change, as I said, on employment standards. We've been working in consultation with the two opposition parties. Minister Farnworth is working with the BC Liberals and the BC Greens, and I want to commend both of those caucuses for the approach that they've been taking to problem solving and working cooperatively for all British Columbians, regardless of partisan perspectives. This is the time when all of us need to come together and focus on the challenges we face, and we do want to make sure that we're protecting workers with the changes that we're proposing, but we also understand that bringing the legislature back is inconsistent with some of the other messages that we're giving to the public about not congregating in large groups. We've been working with Dr. Henry and the Speaker's office to find ways, working with the opposition parties, to find ways where we could have a vigorous debate on the changes we're proposing without having to bring every legislator back to Victoria. We could have a quorum of MLAs to debate the issues so the public has a clear understanding of the pluses and minuses, the pros and the cons, but we do not need to have a full legislature to do that. And Minister Farnworth is working, as I said, cooperatively with both of the opposition parties to realize that outcome. Lastly, before I pass the podium over to Minister Fleming, I just want to again reassert the notion that all of us are in this together. We have a cross-government approach to this. We have a cross-province approach to dealing with stakeholders in every corner of the province. Every sector is going to be impacted by this. We're going to need a plan. We're working on that. We have been for weeks now. The opportunity to flesh that out is just a day or two away as we await final decisions by the federal government. This is a crisis situation. There's no making that sound any better. I want to commend those who are taking appropriate actions for themselves and their families and their businesses, and I want to assure them that we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that your employment is maintained or your salaries are maintained. We're going to be talking about rent banks. We're going to be talking about challenges in the financial sector. Again, right across the board, when Minister James and I are reaching out to industry and business leaders, they are foursquare with us in trying to find a way forward for their companies, for their employees, and the province. So I'm encouraged by that, and I think British Columbia should be encouraged by that as well. And I'll just now ask Rob to talk about the K-12 situation, and then Carol will talk about the framework that she's developing with the federal government.
Thank you very much, Premier, and I want to thank in his absence and in advance of his news conference this afternoon, Minister Adrian Dix and our Provincial Health Officer, Dr. Henry. They were instrumental in what I'm about to announce on behalf of the Ministry of Education, and they've shown tireless leadership and good advice. As the Minister of Education, one of my responsibilities is to make sure that kids and staff and families involved in the school communities are kept as safe as possible in all of our communities right across British Columbia. We're used to schools being safe places where kids learn and grow and socialize. But as the global pandemic, COVID-19, is evolving quickly and it's having a growing impact in British Columbia, we have to take action today to protect our students and staff and keep our schools safe. So the actions that we're announcing today are ones that are well thought out. They're supported by all of the education partners, teachers, and stakeholders in the system. Since COVID-19 was first discovered abroad, the Ministry of Education has been in near daily communication with public health officials in school communities to provide accurate and timely information from trusted sources. We've followed the direction daily of public health officials and scientists in making fact-based decisions when it comes to BC's school system, and we continue to do that. Today, under the direction of the Provincial Health Officer, we are directing all schools to immediately suspend in-class instruction until further notice. Today, more than 99% of students in most public school districts are already on spring break this week, with the exception of Nechako Lakes. Spring break starts for those students tomorrow. There are a small number of independent schools also not on break yet. They are being directed now to suspend in-class instruction. We've urged schools and school districts to begin planning now to ensure a continuity of learning while in-class instruction is suspended in BC schools indefinitely. I have tasked my ministry to work with our education partners to coordinate these initiatives. We also expect school districts and independent schools will have plans in place to maintain some level of service for children of people who are performing essential services on the front line to combat COVID-19. People like teachers, medical health professionals, first responders, and pharmacists. Teachers will be prepared to plan for continuity of learning when their respective spring breaks were originally scheduled to end. That's March 30th. We will continue to work in consultation with our education partners as we plan how we will provide ongoing education services. We'll be in frequent contact with school districts and independent school authorities to ensure that we work through this challenge together and to look for best practices as plans are developed. I want to reassure parents and students, every student will receive a final mark. All students who are on track to move to the next grade in the fall will do so. For grades 10 and 11 students, graduation assessments will be postponed. I know that parents of students in grade 12 will have unique concerns. Every student eligible to graduate grade 12 this year will graduate. The only graduation assessment required for grade 12 students is grade 10 numeracy assessment. Most of grade 12 students currently have fulfilled that requirement. The Ministry of Education, however, will work to ensure that all grade 12 students who have not yet completed this assessment and who are otherwise on track to graduate are able to meet this graduation requirement. The Ministry is also working very closely with post-secondary institutions to ensure that graduating students will transition successfully and smoothly next year. We also understand that there are vulnerable students in the education system who have unique needs. There are important services like meal programs and childcare services operating on school grounds that will need to be addressed. Schools are already considering these issues in their planning while we work together through these extraordinary times. We know some school districts will face unique challenges. We're prepared to meet those challenges together with our education partners, schools, school districts, teachers, teaching assistants, school boards, superintendents, and students. That includes consulting with our education partners as we plan for ongoing learning, and we will continue frequent contact with school districts to ensure we work through this together as plans are developed. We don't have all the answers today. We're in a fast-moving situation. As COVID-19 evolves, we must work together to meet the needs of students and school communities. Parents and guardians are asked to talk to their children about what is happening in their school community. Let kids know the steps that have been announced today. Let them know that they're designed to best protect them and to protect the people most vulnerable to COVID-19. Elders, seniors, their grandparents, people like that in our community. The decision to suspend in-classroom learning was not made lightly. It was made with the support of all school districts, teachers, partners and stakeholders, and under the direction of the provincial health officer. I want to thank our education community who today and always put children first. This is a very challenging time in BC and around the world. Please take the necessary preventative measures to keep you and your families safe. If you think you have symptoms, the Ministry of Health has developed an online self-assessment tool. You can find it at covid19.thrive.health. You can complete the assessment for yourself or on behalf of someone else, or you can call 811 to pre-arrange health testing if you have symptoms. The actions we're taking today are temporary. We will return to regular school life down the road. In the meantime, look out for one another. And remember, we have to act together if we're to prevent the spread of COVID-19 further. Thank you.
I'm going to begin by echoing the theme that you've heard from the Premier and that you heard from the Minister of Education as well, which is we're all in this together. And that really is the focus we're taking when it comes to an economic plan and an economic strategy for British Columbia as well. First and foremost, we're focused on people's health and safety. Protecting people, following Dr. Henry's advice, is the very best way we can protect our province and our communities and our economy. We also need to make sure that any actions we take are in concert with our federal partners. And as all of you know, this situation is constantly evolving. And so our response to support for business, people, and the economy is going to have to evolve with it. British Columbia has a strong economic foundation, but there is no question that COVID-19 will have global impacts, and of course, British Columbians will have impacts. Our economy in BC will be impacted. Over the coming days and weeks, I'm going to keep you updated on the fiscal and economic situation. We're also talking with our colleagues across the country, with experts and business leaders right here in British Columbia to really understand how these impacts are starting to unfold. I'm sure all of you, as we have heard from workers who are in precarious situations, small businesses who wonder if they're going to be able to survive, whether they're going to keep their doors open, and to all those people who are concerned, businesses, communities, people in our communities, I want to reassure you and let you know that we are working on how we can and how we must respond in the immediate. We'll also be looking to the future, but right now we're looking at how we support you in the immediate because we know there are challenges in our province. British Columbians can be assured that government has your back. Together, we're going to get through this. And I think we all have to remember as well that this is a marathon, not a sprint. There are 3 streams that we're working on and that we're committed to as part of our economic strategy. The first one is to make sure that we have services and supports in place to protect the health and safety of British Columbians. Second, we're working with the federal government and with their initiatives to bring in immediate relief for people and businesses. And third, we will be building BC's plan for economic recovery in collaboration with the business community. I also want to recognize the remarkable work of Dr. Henry and Minister Dix and the hardworking healthcare workers and providers and supporters across our province. We know that the best economic plan we can have is to deal with the health and safety of people, and that's why that comes first. Now, you all will have heard the federal announcement of $1 billion for COVID-19 support, and the discussions about how and when that's going to be flowing to British Columbia are still in progress. They're still ongoing. The Prime Minister has stated that there will be an announcement in details tomorrow on how the Government of Canada's economic plan is going to respond to this crisis. You will know that one of the announcements already out there is that the federal government is speeding up the process for employment insurance. But as the Premier has said, our government is also strongly advocating for extending EI, extending the employment insurance program for people who wouldn't typically qualify. So that would include self-employed, part-time, contractors, and we're certainly hoping that we're going to hear that confirmation tomorrow. We're also collaborating with the business community to formulate the longer-term plan. We're looking at the immediate, but we also want to make sure we're looking at the longer-term plan because we do know that our province is going to move into recovery mode. But we're not there yet, and we need to act accordingly. We need to, as has been said by the Minister of Education, heed the advice of Dr. Henry and the Provincial Health Office about the steps we all need to take to care for ourselves and to care for others. I also want to reassure British Columbians that we have a healthy supply chain, that we have appropriate supplies of food and goods coming into British Columbia. The Premier and I had discussions with the Retail Council this morning, and they've assured us again that there's enough in stock right now for everyone. There isn't any need to overstock your own supplies. Doing so will put at risk seniors, single parents, and others who need those necessities. Shop well, plan ahead, but please don't go overboard at other people's expenses. So just to wrap up, I want to finish up again with a commitment that you're going to be hearing over the days and weeks to come. We're committed to working with our partners across the country and working with everyone in the province to be able to weather the pandemic. We're going to remain focused, as I said, on 3 clear priorities: supporting services to protect the health and safety of people, working with the federal government initiatives to bring in our own immediate relief for people and businesses, and building BC's plan for economic recovery in collaboration with the business community. Thank you.